Uh, Thursday evening, it's Jimmy Stafford with you between now and 10 p.m. on Highland Radio, and I'm delighted to welcome my very special guest, co-presenter, Billy Robinson. Billy, good evening to you.
Good evening, Jimmy.
You're very welcome to Highland Radio. And I asked you a few months ago, would you come up and do this? Because just for those of you who tuned in and wondering, well, what's it all about? Well, once every month I have a special guest co-presenter in studio with me who, and I tell them you have to go off and pick 8 or 9 Irish music tracks from any decade, any era, any sort of music. It can be trad, rock, folk or hip or whatever. Once it's an Irish act. And Billy, well, we kept chasing you, and eventually we got a date. And Billy has an array. You probably see in the camera if you're watching on Highland a number of CDs on the desk in front of Billy. But we'll talk, Billy. For those of people who tuned in, and I call you the legendary Billy Robinson, who is Billy Robinson?
Oh, he's a fellow who was born on a farm down in Burt, really. Yeah. And then I got interested in music at an early age and played in show bands, and went from that, and then played with the Rural Roost, which sort of well known in Ireland, that were sort of different from a show band. And then with different bands, then I had Quarterdeck, that were well known in Ireland and then I gave that up and I started doing sound, because Quarterdeck's ex-manager had been worked for Asgard, a big agency in London, and John Hyatt needed a monitor engineer one time, so I'd never done monitors in my life before, but I went out and done it, and then through that company Rosebud in California, I ended up doing a lot more.
So was music always in the family growing up?
Well, my father played accordion when he was young, and then he had an accident with a gun, actually, an accident, and he couldn't pull the accordion in and out, and so that put an end to the accordion playing. Yeah. Somebody handed him a shotgun that he had loaned to a man and to shoot crows or something, and he put his foot in the clutch of the tractor and hit the hammer and went up through his shoulder, and he was when I was 2 or 3, I remember playing on the floor. I can still remember him falling through the door. Wow. Blood. But he recovered anyway, but he couldn't play the accordion and out, anymore. So
what age were you then, Billy?
I was only 2 or 3 or 4 maybe. And then, but he always played. He loved country music, and he had loads of old beautiful country albums and liked good country music. And he used to play the organ with the one hand, and he was a music lover, and
And then that obviously passed on to yourself.
It must. Percy played first, and then I started to play as well.
And is it two in the family, two
just
brothers?
Just 2 of us.
Yeah, and the two. We'll talk about Percy and yourself later on, because we have a load of time to talk. But I think tonight is all about the music. And I said to you, and you said, would it be okay if I played music from the albums I've recorded in the Groove Shack, which is the name of your recording studio in Ramelton? And I said, of course. And what Billy says, I have like 40, 50, 60 albums.
Well, some albums that, like that Shane Hard was a live thing that I mixed it in the Groove Shack, or it wasn't even called the Groove Shack. Some of I had a house in the Steeples, and when I worked with Mary Black, I often mixed her albums, and she would put stories from the Steeples or one of the albums. Because I mixed the album and got people to play it, and a room in my house in the Steeples. Right. And then I got another house, and it's not really a studio, it's more of a shed. But there's a good vibe in there, and people like coming and playing. I do live takes with everybody playing live most of the time.
We'll talk more about the studio later on, and people. And we'll talk about Mary Black and Declan Sinnott and so many other people as well. But we'll play a bit of music, because your first track tonight, and I know you had to dig deep and think. And
no, I really love. I'd done some work with John Prine, and one of the last songs he had written was before he died. Well, he couldn't have written it after he did die anyway, but Brendan Quinn recorded, and I can't even. It's called "I Remember Everything," and I think Brendan was a beautiful voice, beautiful singer, and so myself and Pat Crowley and Mick McCartney got together and recorded. I think Lawrence might be on it, I'm not sure, and recorded this. And it's a couple of years ago. It's during the lockdown. But I always think it's a beautiful version of this song.
So the first song from Billy Robinson on this evening's show on Highland Radio is from Brendan Quinn, and it's called
I Remember Everything.
I Remember Everything. Brendan Quinn.